Congratulations with your new ASIAIR. In this video I'm going to show you everything you need to know about getting started with this thing so you know how to operate it efficiently, especially when you're out there in the dark. And if you're more experienced and you already have this and you've used it for years, do stay tuned to this video as well, because if there are tips and tricks that I likely would have missed, I would love if you would post them in the comment section below so we can share them with the rest of the community around this channel. The ASIAIR comes in two varieties. There's the ASIAIR Plus and the ASIAIR Mini. The main difference between the two is just a little bit of hardware. The Mini comes with two 12-volt outputs, where the Plus comes with 4. The Mini has 32 gigabytes of internal storage, where the Plus has 256 gigabytes of internal storage. I should say though that you can use one of the 4 USB ports on it to expand that storage with a USB stick. So if you want to, you can just plug USB stick in, get more storage space. Other than that, the only difference between the two is that the Plus comes with a physical on-off switch next to the power port, whereas the Mini just turns on whenever you connect power to it. Both of the variants comes with 4 USB ports that you can use to connect up to various accessories. That could be cameras, it could be you want to connect it up to your mount so it can communicate with that. You connect it up to like filter wheels, rotators, guide cameras, all that kind of stuff you can put in there. If you run out of USB ports, it does support by just using a small unpowered USB hub as well. On one end, you will find the 12-volt input. This is a 5x5mm by 2.1mm, and this is the same that it uses for all the 12-volt power ports on these devices. On the side, you will find the 12-volt output ports, but this is where if you want to power, let's say, a dew heater, or if you have a cooled camera and you need to supply power to it, you can supply power through these ports down to your cooled camera. You'll also find a DSLR port. Now, if you're using a DSLR or mirrorless camera as your camera for astrophotography with the ASIAIR, some cameras will be compatible with it just by connecting straight over USB. Go to ASIAIR's homepage and check the compatibility list. I'll try to link for it in the description, as this list might change. But if your camera is not supported, don't worry, you can use this DSLR port just to connect a mini jack between that port and the camera's remote shutter release port. This allows you to just send pulses to the camera through that port, even if it's not supported to connect over USB. If you're using this port, of course, it does mean that you're going to have to set all the settings on your camera and not inside the ASIAIR software, as you could if you were connecting it over USB. Now I'm just going to run you through all the basic settings, all the basic things you need to know in order to get started using your new ASIAIR. The first thing you need to do after you power it on for the first time is you need to connect to the ASIAIR's own built-in Wi-Fi. You can make it connect to your own Wi-Fi, I'm going to show you that in a bit. But for now, for the first time, you need to connect to its own Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi will be called ASIAIR _ and then followed by a number of letters and numbers. In my case, I just renamed mine to ASIAIR _CC for Cosmic Curiosity. But you can rename yours to whatever you want later. The default password is 12345678. Once you connect it, we can go and jump over to the ASIAIR app. It should auto-connect to it, and you should see this interface after it powered on. And what you really do here is just to make sure that your latitude, your longitude is set correctly. You should be able to just click the refresh button above it. If you want, then it should pull it from the phone's built-in GPS. Next, you need to make sure you connect to your mount. So the ASIAIR needs to be connected to your mount. And you can basically select here, you can see I have an on-step controller on mine, but it has like a lot of different options. Pretty much most mounts you're going to encounter out there, the ASIAIR is going to be able to connect to. Then you're going to put in the focal length of your main scope and your guide scope if you have it. And also if you have cameras, you can also set those here, what's your main camera and secondary camera. We can change all this later, but for now, just set those settings. And once we're done, we can click enter. So here we are in the app. Let me just quickly run you through the overlay. First of all, we have at the top here, we have all the controls for all the equipment that we connect, and also the basic settings for the ASIAIR itself. Down this side here, we have controls for the image that we're currently showing, which at the time of this recording is none. I'm going to show you that in more details later. First of all, let's run through the different settings. The first setting here is just the base ASIAIR setting. Here we can see the ASIAIR, the Wi-Fi network it is currently using. We can click in here to the settings, and here we can click the little edit here if you want to change the name. And also if you want to change the password, we can do so in here. I recommend you do that, especially if you're going to star parties. That just prevents people from accidentally connecting to your ASIAIR instead of their own. Now, what you can also do if you want to, is you can go in here to station mode. In here, you can ask it to connect to your home Wi-Fi, and then you're going to be able to connect to your ASIAIR while connected to your home Wi-Fi instead. This is often very popular for people who use the telescope at home, obviously. Next setting here is for your camera. Here you can see I currently have my camera. It is connected and everything, but if we turn this off, I could choose cameras from my list. The only one available is that one, as the other one's currently being used as a guide scope, so we can power that on again. I can set the gain here to whatever I want. It has some presets, but I can also just move the slider around to whatever I want. I'm gonna keep mine at 100. And here we can change that focal length of your main scope. If your camera has cooling, you can set your target temperature. Also, if your camera has built-in anti-dew, you control that from in here. You can set file names if you want to say, oh, I want to have the temperature in the file names as well. You can do that, or if you have any other suffixes, all that can be controlled in here. The next one here is all the settings for your guide camera, and similar you can see up here. We have all the settings for the camera. We can choose it up here from the drop down. We can set the gain that we want for the camera. We can set the focal length, and then you have the calibration settings. The calibration steps has something to do with the with how large a step it takes between each measurement when it's doing a calibration. I'm not going to go into too much detail with that now. If you want me to go and deep dive into a specific topic, then let me know in the comment section, because I'm planning to make those videos, but if there's a specific topic you're interested in, you can just let me know and I'll try to fast track that topic. The next setting here is for your mount. Again, you have basically just basic settings, and again, you have different settings depending on what type of mount you have. If you have some of the ZWOs, you will have more settings available in here than you do here. And then the go-to auto sender. So when you ask the mount to go to a specific target, the app will then take a picture with your camera, and that camera will use to plate solve to figure out if it's actually pointing at the right location and then do a correction. You can then set the exposure time in here. Auto meridian flips, like how long after the meridian should the flip happens, all that kind of stuff, you can set that in here. If you have an electronic filter wheel, you can set those in here. Inside the filter settings, you can name your filters so you know what the filters are. And you can also set the autofocus exposure time. So when you're swapping between filters through the night, if you have an autofocuser, it's going to run through an autofocusing routine. And in here you can set how long exposures those should be. Because again, you can see here with the luminance filter, I just do 2 seconds because lots of lights are coming in. With the broadband filters, I do 10 seconds. And for the narrow bands, I do 20 seconds. If you have a automatic focuser, you have all your settings for that in here, where you can set like how big a step should it do during the autofocus, how much of a temperature change will you allow before it needs to autofocus again. All those things can be set in here as well, whether you want it to beep or not. Oh, my CAA is not connected, so you can see here if you have a camera angle adjuster, you can set that in here, you can connect it, and again, as you can guess, you have all the settings for the CAA in here. Ask it to rotate if we want to, we can change the rotation of that here, and I've set it to beep so I know when it's rotating, because I want to be able to hear audibly when it's rotating, because then I know to go and check for cables and stuff. Finally, down here comes to the more interesting part. This is your built-in storage. So if you have storage inside your ASIAIR, this is where you access it from. So you can see, for instance, you can see a log here. If you want to see my session here from last night, you can see the basic log, when everything started, how everything went, that kind of stuff. But if I want to access the actual images, I can go in here to image management. It will then open up the drive, and we can see here I have from, let's just take from the plan last night, lights, Macarian chain. So here you can see I have all the pictures I took of the chain. So we can see I have my LRGB data in here, and I can just click in on one of them if I want to and load that up. There we go. And we can sit and inspect the data and see how that looks. And another cool thing you can also do in here is down here, if you click annotate down here, you can see it will now highlight all the different, oh shit, stop that, let's try that again. It will now show up with little circles around the different objects, so if you're in doubt what it is you're actually looking at, we can just click that and it will show you what the different objects are. You can also click the detect button. What it will now do is it will try to determine the seeing at the time, so we can see here, it will find some appropriate stars, and it will say, okay, how big were the stars, and it will also show a thing up here at the top. It will show your total seeing, around 5 arc seconds for me. It's not amazing, but that was what I had to deal with on that night. And finally, you have the go-to button. I don't want to do that now because it's the middle of the day. But what you could do that is you can click that, and then the mount will now go to the same location where this picture was taken. Keep in mind, if you don't have a camera rotator, you have to rotate the camera manually yourself to have the same orientation. Okay, over here on the right side, we have a menu that currently says preview. We have a number of different options here. This is basically different shooting modes. We can go into focus mode, and if we do that, now we're able to basically take a picture. I'm gonna get a green box. We can put a green box around a star, and it will now basically show us that star. Will continue to take pictures of that star, and we can now basically focus, and we can slowly see a live view of what that star looks like, and it also calculates how big is the star, how bright is the star, so we can get that as small as possible to just nail that focus as accurately as possible. Next, you have the PA, that's for polar alignment. What will happen here is you can go in, you click the play button, it will take a picture. You need to make sure that your mount is in its polar home position, so it's pointing somewhere in the direction of Polaris. It will take a picture, it will then plate solve it, meaning it will detect the stars and figure out which stars it is. Then it will rotate the mount 60 degrees and take another picture. Based on that, it will know exactly where the mount is pointing, and you will now get this interface that will just live give you updates on how accurately or how close you are, which direction you need to move the mount in order to get it closer. So now you can just do those fine adjustments, and you can just nail that polar alignment. This is a really, really strong and powerful tool to get your polar alignment in very, very quickly. The preview was the one we saw before. This is essentially just if you just want to, take a quick shot. You don't necessarily need to save it. This is good if you just want to see like what the telescope is seeing. So if you're having problems with plate solving or anything like that, I have a video on that already, how to fix that. But then you can just take a quick picture to see what is the camera actually seeing and what is the problem here. The live view here, that is what's called the live stacking. I think this is more often used for color cameras, but what you can basically do here is you can ask it to begin taking pictures, and it will automatically stack the pictures as the night goes on, so you're going to get a better and better images, which is really, really fun. As you can see here, you can go in and set what exposure times you want for your live stack. You can set like flats, darks, biases, all that stuff. You can set all those settings in here if you want to. And the most important thing is go in here and you can say save each frame while stacking. That is important because that means you can do live stacking. You can see the picture getting better throughout the night, but you will still have the individual frames available to you if you want to go home and process them later on for yourself. You're going to have the raw data available to you, but you can still see the progress as the night goes on. The next menu is called Auto Run. This is if you just want to take a series of pictures and just automate the entire thing. You can do, again, this is kind of bit more than preview, as you can now ask it to take multiple pictures. It won't live stack them, it'll just show you the individual frames as they progress. And again, we can go in here, we can basically set it up, we can set what kind of target, we can name the target, I should say. You have to manually tell the telescope where to go. You can set up, I just delete all this. This I set it up for flats, as you can see right now. This is what I usually use my auto run for. But you can go in here and you can say, okay, I want to take light frames, I want to do 300 seconds exposure. Let's do the luminance filter. Let's use 100 gain, and let's say I want to take, I don't know, 20 pictures. There you go. And I'll click confirm, and that's now been put into my plan. I can then put in, let's say I want to have that one, and you can put those in here, and now it's just going to start from the start, which was my light frames or my luminance filter. It's going to take those 20 pictures, and then it's going to move on to the next one, swap the filter wheel over, and take the next ones, and just going to continue to do that throughout the night. Once you've done that, you just click play, and it will just execute that plan for you. Not plan, that auto run, because the reason why I'm so particular about it is because there is something called plans, and that is the slightly more detailed that you would probably use if you want to shoot over multiple nights. So I would say use auto run if you're just shooting for one night, but if you have something where you plan to come back to it over multiple nights, then use plans. If we click on the menu, the burger menu below the plan icon here, in here we can now control our plans. So if we click on the burger menu on the top here, we have different plans. I currently have 2 plans in here. You can see here, here's my elephant trunks plan. You can have multiple targets in a plan. So if you're shooting multiple targets, you can say right now I just have one target, which is the elephant's trunk. We can click on details and we can see
I just set it up to shoot some oxygen because I was missing some oxygen data. But this is exactly the same settings as you can see as you got with the auto run, where you can just set up a sequence of shots that it should take. But the important thing here is that you can set it up now with multiple targets. So let's say I wanted a new target, say, oh, once we're done with that, go over and shoot, I don't know, Andromeda. Let's take Andromeda. Good, there we go, confirm, add that to the plan. We add up our shots, do like whatever. And now we can see we have two different targets in that plan. So now it will first shoot whatever I set it up to do with the Elephant's Trunk Nebula. Once it's done with that, it's going to slew to the Andromeda and it's going to begin taking pictures of that. And you just set up as many targets as you want. This is especially useful if you're leaving your telescope out during the night and you're maybe shooting a target that's high in the sky in the first part of the evening, then maybe it sets or it goes behind some trees, and then you say, okay, once you're done with that, move over to this next one, and you can just set that up in a whole little sequence here, which is really, really neat. But what you can also do is if you click the little like knot icon, that one there, here you have a lot of settings for how your plan should be executed. For instance, if you want to start the plan, but you know that, hey, that target is only going to rise in like an hour or 2 hours, you can set a start time. So exactly like start at, and then just set exactly when you want this target, this plan to start executing. And the same thing is you can also say end the plan at. So let's say you have set up a plan, set up a long plan here as I have here. So you can see this one in total is 7 hours of data, and maybe I can't get all 7 hours in a night. So I'm just gonna go back. I'm gonna set up in here that it should start at a specific time. Let's say, okay, I want this to start at 20 o'clock, 2000. There, let's say it ends, let's say, I can only shoot until, let's say, midnight, or maybe like 11:30 or something like that. I don't know, set a time here. Like, I don't know, let's just say that. So now it will just shoot in that 3.5 hour gap, and then it will stop. And that means if it moves down, if it sets, or if you can't get the entire thing during the night, it's just going to auto stop that plan when it gets to that time. What you can also do is you can click down here on the little Big Dipper icon. That's gonna basically show you where the blue is where the telescope is pointing right now. It's sitting on my kitchen counter, so this is not accurate, but this is where it thinks it's pointing right now. But you can now just move around, basically find the targets you want. You also have a search icon, so let's say we wanted Andromeda. We can always just go with the Macarian chain again. There we go, we can click to it and we can click center. You can see right now it's below the horizon, so that's a bit of an issue. So let's take something that should be above the horizon, because that's a little bit more fun. M81 is above the horizon. Click center, and it will center on M81. We can see it right there. And I now have the option to set up the way I wanted to. Maybe I want to set it up as a mosaic. I can do that in here, like so. But I don't want to do mosaics. But I could now go and basically add this to the plan. There we go. I would normally also be able to set the rotation, but again, I'm doing this during the daytime right now, and I need to do a plate solve, so I need to take one like a preview picture first for the app to know which way the camera is rotated, and then once I've done that, then I have access to actually rotating it. But for now, we can see I've added the M81 to my plan. So if we go here, and again, I could just go and choose more targets if I wanted to. But if we go into our plan now, we can see M81 was added to my plan, and I can now go in and set up the sequence of images that I want to use for it. The menu you have over here on this side, this is just a lot of overlays that you can put in. That's going to basically help you keep an eye on what goes on with the image over the night. First of all, you have the histogram. Here you can just basically do a little quick auto stretch so you can get a better feel for what's actually in the picture. Next, you can open up the focus if you want to manually move the focus around. In most cases, I would recommend that you use the auto focusing routine. What I do use often is the guide interface. This shows you how the mount is guiding. If you click the two little arrows here, the expansion icon here in the corner, you get into the guide settings, and in here the top button just shows you the current calibration, and if you don't have a calibration, obviously it's going to do that the first time. then you start guiding. When you click the loop icon, it will start beginning to take pictures. And when you then click the little crosshair, then it will actually start guiding. And you'll begin to see a blue and red graph at the bottom that indicates how much it's kind of deviating. And you will see the total error, and you can basically monitor your entire guiding from in here. Again, this is a bit more complicated and probably would need a video on its own. Then we have detect and annotate icons. Those do the exact same thing as we saw earlier when we were looking at the pictures, where you can detect the star sizes and you can annotate so you can see what kind of objects are in the current picture. And finally, you have the crosshair, which just puts a big crosshair in the middle. I don't really know what people usually use that for. I never really use it. But I guess if you want to make sure that your mount is not drifting over the night, or if you want to make sure that something is perfectly centered and you want to be able to manually return it, you can use the crosshair. I normally never use it, as my mount does that for me. Now, there's a lot of fine details that I've not been able to cover in this video. And if you have questions, I would really recommend you drop by the Discord server. There's a link for it in the description, or you can scan the QR code on screen and you can ask questions over there. Awesome open community for everybody. And there's no questions that are too dumb or too simple. Just go ask, and I'm sure somebody will be able to help you. If not, then I'll do it myself. And also, again, as I said, if there are specific topics you would like me to go into more details with, post them in the comment section below, because then I know that that's something that I should be focusing on in the future. First thing you should do is, if you have a filter wheel, you go up here to the filter wheel and you make sure that you've set to your luminance filter. It's just a box. It has a bell jack that we can connect in here on the side of the ASIAIR. And then